So thank you for joining me today. Thanks for joining me on this webinar. Ricky Clark is my name. I've met a couple of you, and I'm a digital business advisor at Business Station. So today, what I'm going to do is show you how to improve your Google search rankings by following some relatively easy to implement steps. And hopefully by improving your Google search rankings, your website will attract more visitors, which in turn should result in higher sales or more leads, more subscribers, or whatever your conversion goal might be. So there's a lot to get through today in one short hour. So at the end of the webinar, I provide a link. You can click on that link and it gives you a range of different resources, including this presentation, an action plan, a range of guides. And so you can do some of these things in your own time. So the whole idea today is to sort of take away some of these things so you can sort of do them yourself in your own time and refer back to this. So let's see what we're going to learn today. So, a common question I get asked all the time is, in terms of SEO, is where do I start? So, that's the first question that I'll answer. Then we'll look at doing some of the SEO basics. So the importance of your site structure, keywords, how you can optimize your existing content in a range of different ways. And then we'll look at the tools you can use. Most of them are free, if not all of them. And then we'll finish off with a 12-point action plan. So you can take that away and do these things in small bite-sized pieces. Okay, so let's just, before we start, just defining SEO. Now, most people understand what it means, but just in case. So it stands for search engine optimization. And it's the process of helping your website or a piece of content on your website rank higher on a search engine. So it sounds relatively simple. And improving your SEO is about optimizing your natural keyword usage on your website and addressing other needs. So they might be security, they might be performance, but all of these things are free. You can do them yourselves. If you do it yourself, it's free. So let's look at what the goal of what we're trying to achieve here. So the goal is to appear on this page, the Google search page or a Bing search page. It doesn't really matter. The same principles apply. So let's look at some of the anatomy of a search page. So we're looking for a lawyer in Adelaide. The first section that comes up there is actually an advertisement. So that's using Google search ads. The middle section is Google My Business. So this is Google My Business, Google Maps, Google Reviews. And then the last section here, these two and further down, these are all organic results. So these come about through the application of SEO. So, the idea is to get ideally onto this particular page. There's 10 results, organic results. There's ads down the bottom, as you can see too. And also I'll just point out the related searches. We'll talk about that later. But so as you can see, there's a fair bit of detail on a Google search page, but specifically we're talking about the search engine optimization, the organic search results, but also we'll also touch on a little bit of the Google My Business section as well today. Sorry, I'll just get past that. So where do I start? So how do you identify issues, your SEO issues to begin with? That's possibly the most difficult part for someone that's running a small business and not maybe being fully technical. So let's look at this. So the first thing to do is to do an SEO audit. And it's not a manual audit. There's lots of tools out there, like this one, SEO review tools. They're free. They do this for you. Takes, a couple of minutes to get your site analyzed. There's also plenty of other ones. There's HubSpot's website grader. There's SEO ability. I'm referring to these ones because they're all free. You might need to register, but they're free. And then there's the professional tools that proper SEO professionals use, like SEMrush or Moz, and there's a range of other tools available too. So if we look at one of those, this is SEO Review Tools. It's their website checker. We'll just show you how this works. It's fairly easy. You just enter your website address into the website URL section, enter a keyword that you want to rank for, and then click Perform Check. And it'll go away. It's relatively quick, and analyze a page, usually just a single page, your home page, for example. So it goes away and analyzes that and comes back with a report. Most SEO tools are the same. They'll give you a score out of 100. So this one gets 56, which is, you know, not too good, not too bad. It'll also detail your warnings and your errors and what ways you can improve, but also what things that you're doing well as well. And it'll give you a nice handy to-do list. So this one tells you that it's 2 errors. You need to improve the number of links pointing to your site. You need to add an H1 heading to your web page, and some warnings. Title tag's too long. You're not using your keyword in your title tag. Meta description is too long. Blah, 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 blah. Now, there's a lot of technical terms there, but by the end of this, you'll know what they all mean, and you'll be able to hopefully fix some of these things yourself. It'll also give you other details, like this is how popular that keyword is, how many backlinks you have, the search volumes for your keyword. You obviously want decent search volumes, otherwise what's the point? And title tags and descriptions, which we'll talk about shortly. Okay, like I said, there are other tools available. This is HubSpot's website grader. Similar thing, it doesn't use a keyword, it just gives you an overview of your website and scores you out of 100 and details some information about your performance, mobility, security, that sort of thing. So fairly easy to understand, very simplistic. Because it's not taking into account the keyword, it's probably not ideally accurate. So, you know, it gives you these very simple reports. Now, I just need to make sure everyone can see my screen. If you can't see my screen, please just let me know, because I just got a little message telling me that some people couldn't. But yeah, so very easy to read reports on page size, page requests, and I'll give you little tips on ways that you can fix it. So this particular one, you know, did okay on the mobile side, but the tap targets were a little bit too small. So we'll talk about tap targets later. Tap targets are obviously where you tap if you've got a mobile phone, you know, menu items or buy buttons, that sort of thing. Now, another tool you must use is Google Analytics. Now, I won't go into too much detail here, but Google Analytics, if you're not connected to it, you should, and connect your site to it. And if you are, then you should start to use it. So there's a couple of things you can do with it. First is that you can get quite a bit of information about how users are using your site. So it'll give you a summary of the users, revenue, conversion rate, all the important KPIs over a given time frame. And you can change that to any time frame that you want within reason, and you get a bigger picture view of the performance of your website. You can also see how many active users you have right live at that moment, what pages they're visiting, and the top active pages. It'll also give you snippets of information about some specific thing that might be of interest to you. You can see where your visitors come from, what time of the day they visit, and where they're coming from. So how do they get to your site? What channels are they coming through? Is it social, search, that sort of thing? You can be a bit more specific. If you want to, you can sort by source. So you can see if they're coming from Facebook, from Google, direct, or through some other organic source. It'll also give you other detailed information too, like the devices they're coming in on. So this site here, 82% of their users are mobile users, what pages they're visiting, and how your users are trending over time. So as you can see, Google Analytics does give you a lot of interesting information. I'm just going to show you something I think is the most interesting, though. You can look at your user behavior. Now, this is quite important if you want to see how users flow through your website. So here you can see a flow that shows this is user behavior. So you can look at how users go through your website, what pages they're connecting to, and you can sort that by any sort of user parameter. It could be what city they live in, what device they're using, demographics, a range of different things. But even more useful, I think, is behavior flow. So you can see how users from different landing pages or sources interact with your website. So for example, you'll see that it will break this down into where your traffic's coming from, and then what pages they start on, and how they flow through, the rest of the website. So fairly useful sort of information that breaks it down over a given time frame. So you can highlight individual areas and isolate them. So we're going to look at Google. So all your visitors from Google, there were 1,200 visitors that came in from Google, 486 landed on the home page, and 569 dropped off the home page. So you lost a lot right there. And then all the other pages that they're going to, and then the subsequent pages. And like I said, you can look at the drop-off. The drop-off is important because that could be related to poor performance. It's often referred to as a bounce rate. So a bounce rate is when someone comes to your website and then does nothing. So it's not an ideal situation usually. Often they'll leave your website. So that's Google Analytics, very useful tool for maybe identifying problem areas. Now, I won't go into this in any detail at all, but Google Search Console, another free tool, you should use it because it will allow you to do a few things like measure your site's performance, identify issues that need to be fixed. It might be an issue with mobile phone performance, for example, and you can fix that. But you can also submit, not necessarily submit content, but you can ask Google to index your content. So if you've got something you want to be indexed sooner rather than later, you can do it through here. That's particularly useful for blogs or that sort of thing. And you can also submit your sitemap. The sitemap is how Google navigates your site or knows what pages to navigate. Okay, so after completing the audit and doing a bit of research through analytics, maybe, you should have some idea of what areas on your website require attention. So what you should do is use these as a guide, because you'll find that most of the issues that you have will fall into the area of what you might call SEO basics that we're going to look at now. And this is the area you should follow anyway. So you should always try and follow a basic SEO process as part of your business processes. So what are they? I hear you ask. So firstly, if you do these things well, you will get results. You'll get an improvement in your search engine ranking. So the first thing to do is to ensure that the structure of your site, the way your content is grouped or linked, is logical, and it's simple, relatively flat and easy to follow. Secondly, you need to identify keywords, or keyword phrases is probably a better term. So search engines understand what your website's about, and so they can match your website to relevant search terms. You also then need to optimize your content. And optimize is a much overused word sometimes, but it does sort of define what we need to do, and we'll talk about how we can do that. And not just that, you need to develop ongoing quality, relevant content. You need to make sure your site's secure and it goes fast, to put it simply, but we'll talk a bit about that. And very importantly are links. So there's two types of links. There are internal links between pages, and then there's external links from other sites and to other sites. So they are very important and taken into account. And then finally, your local SEO, particularly important, of course, if you're a local business and want local customers. So let's look at each of these briefly. So site structure. So site structure is very important because it gives you the context, basically, from which you can then develop the content structure, the topics, and keywords. So a very important starting point. It also gives your website, and particularly the higher priority pages, a better chance of improving their ranking. So that might be your home page or your category pages, for example. And I'll show you a picture of why, and that's because pages lower down the hierarchy will lend their links and their content to pages further up the hierarchy to enable them to rank better. The same applies to, say, category pages will provide their links and content higher up the hierarchy to the subcategory pages, for example, or vice versa, subcategory to category. And likewise all the way to the home page. So the category pages will then, their links and content will help the ranking of the parent page. So very important. Now links are also important, and site structure is very important because it enables Google to crawl your site. If your site's too complicated and too deep, you're going to miss out on Google crawling all of your site. If it's relatively flat and simple and has lots of links connecting the pages, then Google will easily crawl your site. And of course, most importantly, it's easy for your users to navigate, easy for them to find information. You know, it needs to be logical in that way. Okay, so let's talk about keywords. So according to Google, the most basic signal that information is relevant is when a web page contains the same keyword as the search query. So they match a keyword search to a website that has that keyword in it, simply speaking. So when you optimize your content around words or phrases that people search for, then hopefully your website can rank higher for those terms. So if anything today, your keyword goal should be to identify and use a target keyword phrase plus other terms that are associated with it, maybe variations, synonyms, that sort of thing. So identify and selectively use a target keyword phrase for each page or piece of content on your website. So that's pages, products, product categories or page categories, collections, blog posts, etc. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, before we go on to that, let's just talk about long tail keywords. So long tail keywords are just multi-phrase words, if you like. So in this example, t-shirts is a single word phrase, blue t-shirts, you know, 2-word phrase, etc., etc. Ideally, you want to go for a longer phrases as your keyword because they're much lower. They're not as competitive as the short single word phrases. So to give you an example, if you did sell t-shirts, it's going to be hard to rank for the word t-shirt versus even blue t-shirts. But if you add another word to that or another 2 words, then it becomes easier once again. But not just easier, because you're able to rank, your conversion rate would be better as well. So long tail keywords are important. So to give you an example, if you were a builder, say in Mount Barker, your keyword phrase might be Mount Barker home builder, for example. That's a very simple example instead of builder. Or if you're selling a dress as a product, your keyword phrase might be floral cotton summer maxi dress, for example, instead of just dress. So you've got multiple keywords within one keyword phrase. So you could rank for any combination of those. And the same if you have a service. So ideally you might put the service, maybe a feature of the service plus a location versus just the service. So an example would be small business accountant Perth versus just using the word accountant. So it sounds all very logical. Let's go and see how we could sort of identify some keywords on doing our own research. So this is just using Google. I've put in the word Brisbane builder. And firstly, what you want to use there is what's called Google Suggest. So Google will suggest these particular words, and they're a great way to find 3 or 4 word phrases. And that's really what you want to look for. Another place is here. People also ask, there are more questions, but might be suitable for an FAQ or maybe a blog post, for example. And down the bottom, you've got related searches. So related searches are searches that people are actually searching for, and they give you, just some ideas of 3 or 4 word phrases that you could use as your keyword. So there are also a range of tools out there as well that enable you to do this. So there's Google Search Console, which I mentioned earlier. There's also tools like Ubersuggest. Now you need to register for that, but it is a free service with limitations. There's also Moz's Keyword Explorer. There's SEO review tools as well. There's also Keyword.io. There's lots of different tools out there. Now I'm going to show you an example using Moz's Keyword Explorer. Now this is a professional tool. People, agencies, web design agencies and marketing agencies use this. But you can, if you register, you can get this for free. Whoops, I'll just go back to that. Okay, so we're using Keyword Explorer, like I said, and I actually signed up for a 30-day trial. So you can do that with some of these as well. Simply enter the keyword in that you want to research. So I'm going to type in home furnishings, Sydney. Make sure I choose the right country and then click Analyze. And it comes back with some data. So it shows you search volumes, how many searches a month, which is important, how difficult it is to rank in the top 10 out of 100. We'll also give you details of who's showing up on that page and also some keywords. So there's some keyword suggestions for you. And there's a whole list here. It gives you a list of different keywords that you could potentially use or get some ideas from. It also gives you the search volume and how relevant it is to the original keyword that you search for. So you can get some great ideas from these sorts of sites. And you can also sort of click on a couple to select them, and then you can export that to either a list or to a CSV. Okay. Now, the best keyword research tool is actually Google's Keyword Planner. It's free. You do need a Google Ads account. And once you've got a Google Ads account, it's just one of the tools on there. So I'll just see if I can, there you go. So Keyword Planner, highly recommend using this because it gives you a lot more data than the other ones do for free. And you can look at search volumes and forecasts for that particular keyword, or you can just discover new keywords. So you just simply type in the word that you want to research. So I'm putting in here Brisbane builder. And you can add multiple keywords if you want. And you just, once you've done your keywords, you just make sure you select the right country. You can put in a domain if you want to, and you can actually start with a website, but we're starting with keywords, and then click Get Results. And you'll see there, it'll come up with a list of suggested keywords, how popular those keywords over time, but also a list of keywords, how popular they are, how competitive they are, and a range of other things. So fairly useful tool for research, particularly when you start to get into the advertising. If you want to do Google search advertising, it also gives you a price per click and a range of other things. So very worthwhile getting the Google Ads account and setting up the Keyword Planner. Okay, so how do you optimize your content? You found your keywords, you now need to start to optimize your content. So how do you do that? So let's say you operate Tom's Mechanical in Darwin, and you've chosen your key phrase as being car mechanic Darwin. So you use the site structure and the keywords that we've developed, the keywords and the site structure we mentioned earlier as your starting points, and you start developing relevant on-topic content. So this is quite a simplistic diagram here, but it's just giving you the idea. So you use the keyword, the primary keyword in your title of that particular page. You can even use it in your URL if that's possible. You can change your URL, add it in your body text a couple of times. Also maybe some associated terms, and add it as an alt image tag as well. So, don't worry, I'll show you a bit more about how you can do all of these in a little bit. So don't forget, you don't want to overuse it. We're just talking about natural usage of that keyword. And you use it naturally throughout the piece. And add links, and we'll talk about that shortly. So that's a brief overview of how you optimize your content. There's also some other things you need to do. So think about who you're developing the content for. There are ways to do this easily by maybe just developing, if you've got multiple customer types, then maybe develop some personas for each of them. So when you're developing content for that persona, you've got that particular person in mind. And you want to write quality, natural content. And like you would for, say, a Word document, you want to format it properly. So use proper headings and subheadings, H1 headings and H2 headings, H3 headings. And you want to use quality images. And when you use quality images or all images, you want to add the alt image tag. And we'll talk about that shortly, as well as meta titles and meta descriptions. So I know we're getting into a bit of jargon speak here, but you will hear these mentioned all the time, and they are important. We'll talk about how we'll demystify them shortly. And then we'll look at how you add some internal links. So it might be from your homepage to product categories, from categories to products, etc. And then the performance. So how you optimize the performance. It's usually starting with image compression, which is very easy to do. Okay, so let's look at meta titles and meta descriptions. What is a meta title and a meta description? Well, the meta title is that the URL or the title that you see in your search snippet when you Google search something. It's about 60 characters, and it's basically telling the user what that link is going to take them to. Your meta description is the little paragraph underneath that, and it's 160 characters, and that sort of describes a little bit about the page. So this is different from your titles and descriptions on your page. What this is basically enabling you to do is do a little sales spiel to the visitor or to the person that's searching for that term. So why should they come to your website, and what are they going to get when they get there? So this, if you don't do this, Google will just take something from your website. So ideally, this is a great opportunity to put the right message out there. Make sure people click on your link rather than the one above you, for example. So how do you do that? So, well, firstly, you have to add it to your website. Now, it needs to be added to a little bit of code on your web page in the head section. Now, yeah, that's a little bit complex for most people. So luckily, if you use Shopify or WordPress or Wix, it's very easy to do that. So I'll just show you how you could do it yourself very, very easily. So this is an example of a Wix website backend, and it's showing the page settings for a particular page. And if you click on that, you'll get the SEO Google section that you can complete, and that will allow you to change not just the meta title, but also the meta description and also the URL. Now, If you have WordPress, it's just as easy to do. You might need a WordPress SEO plugin like Yoast, for example, but you can easily edit the snippet and put whatever title and description you want in there. If you use Shopify, similar thing. This is particularly showing a product, but it could be a page. Down the bottom of the product page, or when on the back end, or any other page, it'll allow you to edit the website SEO, and you just add the description and title that you want. So it's relatively easy to do, but you've got to write them. So let's talk about writing them. So how do you write a meta title? So it's fairly simple, really. You want to use, remember you've got the 60 characters to complete, the 65 characters. So you want to make sure that it's a keyword, for example, maybe a location, and the business name with separations between them. Use the vertical line or a dash, or you could use primary keyword, secondary keyword, and brand name. So they're just some examples. So how would that look? So let's say you're Jessica's yoga studio and you want to set up your meta title. You might use something like private yoga studio as your keyword, New York City as a secondary keyword, and Jessica's yoga studio as the business name. So that would be her meta title, and that's what you would add. In this case, it's a Wix website to the meta title section in the SEO settings. You could also have Nike shoes, men's and women's, free shipping, range of different things, and you want to keep them all unique. So just to reinforce, it could be anything, but ideally something like keyword, location, business name. Location's particularly important if you are a location-based business or a local business, or primary keyword, secondary keyword, brand name, for example. Meta description's a little bit different. It's really a short summary of your of the page they're going to. So you just want to clearly communicate what the page is about and why they should click on the link. So remember, with the meta descriptions, it's 160 characters. Most of these website platforms will tell you that when you put it into the area that's associated with it. You also, ideally, you want to use the keyword in your meta descriptions as well. And just explain to the user, why should they click on your link? What's the benefit to them? And use the right style of voice, essentially, that matches your website brand. So we've talked about adding alt image tags. Same thing again. How do you do that? Well, it's very easy. So you want to add the same keyword from that particular page onto your alt images, onto your images. So this is an example of, this is a a WordPress website, and they allow you to, under the image settings, add a description of your picture. So alt image tags, by the way, are very important because they're used for people that might not be able to see, for example. So if they're using a tool that will interpret what they're seeing on the page, that will actually use the alt text tag to explain what the image is about. So it is quite important from an accessibility point of view, but it's also important from an SEO point of view. So that's WordPress. And Shopify, same sort of thing. So you can edit your image and just add an alt image text to that. So relatively simple. WordPress, same thing. Sorry, Wix, same thing. Under the image settings, it doesn't use the word alt image tags. It says what's in the image, tell Google. So you put your description in there. Okay, so just one more thing on alt image tags. 125 characters, use the keyword in the description if possible. And sorry, I'll just go back to that. And I just want to show you that example on the right there. So how to write a good one. So, an okay one might be man on escalator. A better one would be man walking on escalator. And, the best one would be man wearing backpack walking down escalator. So just use, a bit of creativity in your alt image tags. Now, links. Links are very, very important. And there's a couple of different types. So the first type are internal links. And we've spoken briefly about this. So this is where you're linking pages and other things within content within your site. So an example of that might be where you provide a link to one of your products. So people can easily navigate to that site. And also, so Google can crawl to that site much easier and understand how your site's connected. Now, this is easy to do, and you should have at least aim for about 10 per page, if possible. So you do that by having products on the home page. You might have quick links to important content in an easy way, so it's easy to find that content. That's a very easy way to do it. So just to explain that again, so on your menu, you might have a link to a category page, for example. You might have from a category page to individual categories or products, for example. And by doing that, you're giving those pages more authority because they have more internal linking. So important thing to do and relatively straightforward to do. External links are links to your site or from your site to your site from other websites. So they could include industry sites, authoritative sites basically, but it could also include authoritative blogs, Facebook itself, other social pages, Google My Business, business directories, citations, and reviews. Now, I will talk about citations shortly, but that's a very, very easy way to get external links pointing to your site. You don't want just any links though. Some links are toxic. That's where things like Google Search Console come into play. They'll identify which links are toxic. Now, they're not always easy to identify as toxic links. And that's just because maybe over time sites have been neglected and been hijacked and that sort of thing. So it's very easy to disavow toxic links too. So it's just something to keep an eye on because it can affect your ranking. You don't want to link to just anybody. Now, external links are harder to do. You want to sort of aim though for 25 plus homepage backlinks if you can. So it's quite a lot. So we'll just talk a little bit more about that and also sort of go into local SEO at the same time. So local SEO, if you're a local business, bricks and mortar, you want to attract local customers, then local SEO and Google My Business are essential. So you should, just as a basic thing, go and claim and verify your business straight away. So it's fairly easy to do. If you haven't claimed your business, you search for it in Google and claim it that way. So verifying is also important because it verifies that you are an actual business and a range of other things. It allows you to manage your Google search listings, your map listings, your reviews, and a range of other things too. So very, very important. You can optimize your listing. You can add posts, products, more reviews, and it's an important task if you're a local business. So that's something I would definitely focus on doing. The other thing I would focus on doing is connecting to some citation sites. So citation sites normally just in this scenario anyway, they're business directory sites, local business directories. There's a lot of them out there, and here's some of them listed. Start local, local search, yellow pages, white pages, true local, hot frog. They all give you a connection from there to your website, and they do rank very, very well. So sometimes in a search, you'll have your site come up alongside maybe even a couple of these business directories with your listing on there. So it will improve your overall authority and visibility out there in the marketplace. So just on this, I do have a list of citation sites for Australia that I provide a link to at the end of this course, so you can go ahead and sort of start to submit your business to them. They'll want to know things like, you know, what's your company name, your contact details, your address, opening hours, all those sorts of things. So we'll definitely look at getting some citation sites up and running. It's a very easy way to get backlinks to your site. The other thing you might want to consider are industry sites. If you're part of an industry association, or if, say, for example, you're a supplier of some product, you might go to the supplier's website and ask them to link to you. You often get guest posts. Guest posts on good blogs are a good way to maybe write a blog about a particular product and link back to that, to your product or to your homepage. Okay, so local SEO and Google My Business, very, very important. Okay, so we're just going to look now at security and performance. They are also important. They're both key ranking factors for Google. So for example, if you have two sites that in every way were equal, but one was slow and one wasn't, the fast one would rank higher than the slow one. Likewise with security. If you've got an insecure website versus a secure one, they will definitely, the secure one will rank above the insecure website. So the most important thing from a security point of view is to make sure that you're using an SSL certificate. So the little padlock on your domain, on your URL, when you look up in your browser window, the HTTPS prefix to your domain, very, very important. In a lot of cases, you can get these for free now, depending on your website provider. If you're with Shopify or Wix, it's just standard. If you're with WordPress, you just need to get someone to install that or to do that yourself. Now, a good way to show, you know, that you are a secure website, although anyone can do this really, is just to add some trust seals to your website. So this particular one is for Shopify, showing, you know, what payment options you accept and how your site is secure as well. Now, performance is just back on security. There is one other thing you need to do, and that's particularly the case if you're a WordPress user. But in all cases, you want to make sure that you're using strong passwords, and you want to make sure that your site is constantly updated. So keep any plugins updated, keep WordPress updated, any apps updated, that sort of thing. Okay, performance. So performance, you know, there are tools out there that you can use to measure your performance, and I'll show you one of those in a second. But mostly it's about images are being too big. When I say too large, I don't mean too size-wise, I'm talking about weight. So they're too heavy. So you can use tools that compress the image. They keep the same dimensions, but they're just not as heavy. So you want to use those. There are free tools around like TinyJPEG or tinyjpg.com or tinypng.com. They're the same business, same website, and you just drop your image onto their website and they'll compress it for you. So I definitely recommend them. Also, from a performance point of view, once again, particularly if you're a WordPress website, you want to make sure you've got a good web host and it's you know, a high performing web host. Now you can check your website no matter who you're with, Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, anybody. You can go to gtmetrics.com, put in your domain, your URL, and they'll give you a result of your performance based on an A to F scale. So definitely worth looking at, because it will identify areas that you could use to improve. Often case too, some other ways to improve performance would be using CDN, a content delivery network. And there are even free ones of those available. Cloudflare is one which you can use. I would only recommend that if it's a real issue for you, or particularly if you have users outside of Australia in international locations, because it can improve the performance, particularly for users that are far away from the website, web host. Okay, so that's security and performance. You do also need to optimize your site for mobile. Remember that site we looked at previously on Google Analytics, 82% of their visitors were using mobiles. In this case, or generally speaking, you're going to have at least 50%, if not more, using mobile. So you need to cater for them. And Google prioritizes mobile-friendly websites over non-mobile friendly websites. So you definitely want to keep that into account. So some tips, basically, very simple tips here. If you are designing the website yourself, make sure you, if not all the time, at least some of the time, use the mobile design view. So it gives you a view of what the mobile site would look like. So I would definitely recommend that. If you are designing your own website, I would also recommend designing for fat fingers. So if you think about the two on display here, the two examples I'm showing you, and you've probably come across these websites before where it's almost impossible to read the text or to touch a menu item or press a button. They're just too small. So design for fat fingers is a good technique. Don't use pop-ups, for example. Pop-ups will slow it down. So generally it's not a good thing to do on mobile websites. And also they can be very difficult to turn off if they're on a mobile, sometimes difficult to find the cross on there. And same thing. So make sure, particularly for mobile, that your images are optimized, compressed, and use the tool I mentioned before, tinyjpeg or tinypng.com. There's lots of other ones out there that will compress your image for you. And my advice is to test your website. Try it on your own mobile, even on someone else's would be best that hasn't visited your website before. Because remember, your site is cached in your browser, so it's not giving you a true measurement of the performance, because it's going to be much faster than, say, someone that hasn't visited your site before. And you can also go to Google's mobile friendly test, and it'll tell you if your site's mobile friendly or not. Okay, so we've covered a fair bit of ground there. I'm just going to show you now some tools that you can use to do a lot of these tasks. Now, like I said, there is a list. This presentation is provided as a download, so you can easily access this later, but just go through them all. So Google Search Console. I can't remember the actual URL because I don't often type it in anymore, but if you just search for Google Search Console and open an account, definitely recommend that. Likewise with Google Analytics and Google Ads. So you go to analytics.google.com or ads.google.com. I think Google Search Console might be search or webmasters. I can't remember, .google.com. Also Google My Business. Definitely, set up your Google local profile for your business. Now, for site audit tools, there's a lot of them out there. I would recommend something simple to use, SEO review tools, because it's used by, some key players out there, but it's also gives you a lot of other tools that you can use that might also be very useful for you and are also free. Now, if you do have an e-commerce site, I recommend using or going to Think with Google. If you search Think with Google and you go to that site, at the top, if you go to the US version of that site, there is actually an e-commerce tool called Grow My Store. And I do recommend using that if you particularly have a retail type e-commerce store. Keyword tools. I would definitely suggest using Google's Keyword Planner. It's the most comprehensive, and it's free, and you can use it for Google search ads as well if you want to do that. Now, meta titles and meta descriptions, if you are having difficulty with that, there are some tools out there. Some of them are a bit iffy though, to be honest. I've given you a link here to an automated tool. It uses artificial intelligence, does a few other things too, so it might be worth visiting, but not using it to do all of your things, just maybe giving you some ideas on how to do some of them. how mobile friendly your website is. There's the mobile friendly test by Google, which I mentioned before. You can just search that as well, but there is a link on this page. If you want to test your website performance, like I said, performance is a key criteria for Google when ranking websites, so make sure that your website's fast. And use image compression, so tiny JPEG and tiny PNG. So there's some of the keyword tools I use, other people use, and I recommend that you use them too. Now let's look at a 12-step action plan. So look, we went through a lot of information there. The whole idea is not necessarily to do it all at once. You want to do them in bite-sized pieces. And if you can do one at a time, you'll find that you're starting to make some progress. So the first thing I would recommend is doing some research. Do an SEO audit using the tools I recommended and just see what the results are and see what they recommend you need to fix. Do some keyword research. So use Google's Keyword Planner or one of the other ones I suggest, like Keyword Explorer, and just identify some keyword phrases for the home page, for all of your other pages, and for category pages, even about, contact us, all those pages. Maybe build a little spreadsheet. Well, just on that, there is a keyword planner that I also provide a link to at the end of this presentation. Make sure you get your structure right. So develop a keyword plan based around your structure and based on a logical flow of content and where that content belongs and where people are going to be looking for that content. And make sure you've developed keyword for each of those, unique and ideally a long tail keyword. So then you want to start writing some content for each of those pages, or if you've got some content, start optimizing the content. So for each product, each page, each category, think about the keyword in the title, in the body, in the alt image tag, write those meta descriptions that I talk about. So, just build it into your process. When you're doing the optimization of your page, just go and do the meta title, meta description at the same time. Check and fix the mobile version of your website. Like I said, check it on someone's website or mobile. Ask them to do it for you and see what their opinion is. Do some of the tests I told you, the Google mobile friendly test. Compress so find which are your large images and compress them using one of those tools and add the alt image tag while you're at it, using the keyword for that particular page. So, it's relatively straightforward to do. You want to add a few internal links. So linking to products, linking to categories, for example, and try and identify, if you can, 3 sites, authoritative sites, that you might be able to get a backlink from. Sometimes it's a matter of approaching them saying, hey, I want to list my website on your directory or as a supplier or a member, whatever the case may be. Definitely recommend trying to do that. And then submit your site to a few directories. So Yelp, TrueLocal, whatever the case may be, it usually takes 3 or 4 days, I think, for them to process your submission, but it's definitely something worth doing sooner rather than later. Set up and connect Google My Business and all your social pages. So set up your website so they can follow your social profiles, share content, maybe a feed, for example, of might be Instagram or Facebook, etc., etc. So just start to integrate the two and set up Google My Business. Also, Google Search Console and Google Analytics, I did mention that as well. So just something you definitely want to do. And finally, do some research using some long tail keyword phrases, and try and post a blog if you can. A blog post, if not a blog post, maybe a social post, but ideally a blog post, because blog posts will rank for that particular key term. So there's your 12-step action plan. Hopefully you'll go away and implement that. Now, if you do have any questions, I might just see if there are any questions. Feel free to, send me a question now via chat or later via email. You can send it to ricky@businessstation.com.au. If you follow that link there, I don't know if you can just write that down now, or alternatively come back and get that link later. You'll find these slides, notes, checklists, keyword templates, a range of other workbooks and things that you can use. So I hope that was of value. Thank you very much for attending, and good luck with your search engine optimization. Thank you. Bye.